Admiral Vexthul stood on the bridge of the Sovereign's Mandate. His forearms crossed behind his back as he stared at the endless stars. The flagship of the Korthax Empire floated in the quiet sector near the border of human space. For 3,000 years, his people had ruled most of the galaxy. Their technology was perfect. Their military was unbeatable. No one challenged them anymore because everyone knew it was pointless. The humans were discovered 50 years ago. Vexthul remembered reading the first contact report. Such a young species, barely able to leave their own solar system with their primitive fusion engines. They still used metal bullets in their weapons. Their ships looked like metal boxes held together with bolts and welds. The Empire had laughed at first, then felt sorry for them. They gave humans a small territory at the edge of the galaxy. Like giving a child a corner to play in. "Admiral, we have something strange on the sensors," Commander Zarakan said, her blue scales shimmering under the bridge lights. She was young, only 200 years old, but talented with reading sensor data. Vexthul turned slowly. Nothing was ever truly strange anymore. When you lived for 1,000 years and had seen everything the galaxy could offer, surprises stopped existing. "What kind of strange, Commander?" "There's an energy signature moving from human space toward us. But sir, it doesn't match any human ship in our database." She pulled up the holographic display and numbers started scrolling past. "The energy output is... This can't be right." The Admiral walked over, his heavy footsteps echoing on the metal floor. He looked at the numbers and frowned. The readings showed power levels that would require a small star to generate. "Your sensors are broken, Commander. Run a diagnostic." "I already did, sir. 3 times. Zarakan's voice had a nervous edge to it now. "The signature is moving at speeds that should be impossible for human technology. It's leaving gravitational ripples in space. Our sensors are actually warning us to move away." Vexthul laughed, a deep rumbling sound. "Humans can barely build ships that stay together during faster-than-light jumps. You're telling me they built something that scares our sensors? It's probably a mining accident. Maybe they blew up one of their primitive reactors and sent debris flying through space." But something in Zarakan's expression made him look at the data again. The signature was moving with purpose, not randomly like debris would. It was following shipping lanes. It was accelerating and decelerating at specific points. It was acting like a ship, but the energy readings were all wrong. "Send Scout Squadron 7 to investigate," Vexthul ordered. "Tell Captain Mordeth to scan it and report back. It's probably nothing, but we should check. The humans might have found some old technology they don't understand and accidentally activated it." Captain Mordeth received the order aboard his scout ship, the Swift Silence. He was the best scout captain in the fleet, with over 300 successful missions. His squadron of 12 light scout ships could handle any situation. He read the mission briefing and laughed. "The humans built something scary," he said to his bridge crew. "What did they do, strap 10 of their primitive engines together and hope for the best?" His crew laughed with him. Everyone knew humans were harmless. They were like children playing with toys while the adults ran the galaxy. The squadron jumped to the coordinates where they expected to intercept the energy signature. Mordeth was relaxed, already thinking about the report he would file. Probably something like investigated anomaly. Found human ship experiencing critical engine failure. Provided assistance per standard protocols. The Empire always helped lesser species when they were in trouble. It was the burden of being superior. Space in front of them started to ripple. Not the normal ripple of a ship dropping out of faster-than-light travel, but something else. Something that made the fabric of reality seem to bend and twist. Mordeth sat up straight in his chair, his casual attitude vanishing. "All ships form defensive pattern," he ordered, though he wasn't sure what they were defending against. The ripples grew stronger and then space seemed to tear open. Not violently, but smoothly, like someone unzipping reality itself. What came through the tear made every member of Mordeth's crew stop breathing. The ship was huge, easily the size of a battlecruiser, but that wasn't what shocked them. It was the design. Every alien species in the galaxy built ships the same way. Smooth, elegant, with visible shield generators and weapon ports. This thing looked like someone had taken a mountain of metal and beaten it into a vaguely ship-like shape. The hull was covered in sharp angles and crude-looking armor plates. There were no visible weapons, no shield generators, nothing that looked like standard technology. But the sensors were screaming. Whatever those armor plates were made of, they couldn't scan through them. The power readings were off every chart they had. The space around the ship seemed to bend like reality itself was trying to get away from it. "Sir, I'm reading," "This can't be right," his sensor officer said. "The hull material is shifting between dimensions." "The power source is." "Sir, I don't understand these readings. The computer says it's impossible." Mordeth tried to open a communication channel. "Unknown vessel, this is Captain Mordeth of the Korthax Empire. Identify yourself and state your purpose." For a long moment there was silence. Then every screen on every ship in his squadron lit up with the same message, displayed in perfect Korthax script. UES Prometheus Unbound. Human Engineering Corps. Conducting peaceful transit through Imperial space. Human? That was impossible. Mordeth looked at the massive ship again. There was no way humans built this. They didn't have the technology, the knowledge, or the resources. It had to be a trick, a lie, some kind of elaborate deception. "Human vessel. Power down and prepare to be boarded for inspection," Mordeth commanded, trying to keep his voice steady. The response came immediately, but not through communications. Every single system on every scout ship in the squadron simply turned off. Not damaged, not destroyed, just switched off like someone had found an off button that shouldn't exist. The lights went out. The engines stopped. The life support systems went quiet. Emergency power didn't kick in because there was nothing wrong with the systems. They were just off. In the darkness, lit only by the stars outside their windows, Mordeth and his crew watched the impossible human ship drift past them. As it moved by, their systems came back online one by one, exactly as they had been before. No damage, no missing data, nothing to show they had been touched except for one thing. Every computer screen showed the same message. "Next time, we won't turn them back on." Mordeth's hands were shaking as he reached for the emergency communication system. He needed to warn the Admiral. He needed to tell them that everything they believed about humans was wrong. The Empire had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed humans were primitive because their visible technology was crude. They had never considered that maybe, just maybe, the humans were showing them exactly what they wanted them to see. The transmission he sent back to the Sovereign's mandate was short, but it would change everything. His face was pale, his usual confidence gone, as he spoke the words that would shake the Empire to its core. "Admiral Vexthul, this is Captain Mordeth. The humans, they've been hiding. They've been hiding everything. That's not just a ship. It's a predator, and we've been thinking they were prey. Sir, we need the entire fleet. We need it now." Back on the Sovereign's mandate, Admiral Vexthul watched the transmission 3 times. Each time he hoped he had misunderstood. Each time the message remained the same. The impossible ship in the sensor data wasn't a malfunction or a mistake. It was real. It was human. And it had just treated his best scout squadron like toys to be turned on and off at will. For the first time in 500 years, Admiral Vexthul felt something he had forgotten existed: fear, pure, simple fear. Because if the humans could hide something like this for 50 years, what else were they hiding? And more importantly, why were they showing it now? The galaxy was about to learn that humans hadn't been struggling to survive among the stars. They had been preparing, and now they were ready. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus Unbound, watching the disabled Korthax scout ships float helplessly in space. She was 43 years old, young by galactic standards but experienced by human ones. Her black hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and her brown eyes showed no emotion as she watched the alien vessels drift. "Captain, all 12 scout ships have been successfully disabled," Lieutenant Commander James Park reported from his station. "No casualties. Systems can be restored remotely whenever you give the order." Sarah nodded. "Keep them dark for another 5 minutes. Let them think about what just happened. Let them wonder." The bridge of the Prometheus Unbound was nothing like the elegant command centers of Korthax ships. It was functional, practical, almost ugly in its simplicity. Exposed conduits ran along the ceiling. Multiple backup consoles sat next to primary ones. Everything had 3 different ways to work because humans had learned long ago that everything that could break would break, usually at the worst possible moment. But underneath that crude appearance was technology that would make the greatest Korthax scientists weep with confusion. The ship itself was humanity's greatest secret, 20 years in the making. 20 years of pretending to be primitive while they learned, adapted, and improved everything they saw. "You know they're going to panic," said Commander Jiang Wei, Sarah's second in command. He was an older man, 60 years old, with gray streaking through his hair. He had been there from the beginning when the plan was first proposed. Good, Sarah replied. They should panic. They've been treating us like children for 50 years, taxing our trade routes, limiting our expansion, telling us what technology we're allowed to have. They never once asked themselves why we accepted it all so easily. The truth was beautiful in its simplicity. When humanity first encountered the Korthax Empire, they could have fought. Their technology was already more advanced than they let on, but fighting would have meant destruction. The Empire was too big, too powerful. So humanity did what humans always did when faced with a superior predator. They played dead. They appeared weak. And they learned. Every piece of technology the Empire shared with them, thinking they were helping primitive humans, was taken apart and studied. Every ship that visited human space was scanned with sensors the aliens didn't know existed. Every casual conversation with alien traders was recorded and analyzed. Humans learned how galactic technology worked, but more importantly, they learned its limits. They learned what the aliens thought was impossible, and then they did the impossible. The hull of the Prometheus Unbound was the perfect example. To alien eyes, it looked like crude metal plating. In reality, it was made of something humans called programmable matter. Each molecule could shift its properties, becoming harder than diamond or flowing like liquid as needed. It could exist in multiple dimensions at once, making it impossible to scan or target. The aliens thought shields were the ultimate defense. Humans decided not to be hit in the first place. The power source was even more impressive. While the galaxy used fusion reactors or antimatter cores, humans had gone in a different direction. The Cascade reality engine at the heart of the ship didn't generate power. It borrowed it from parallel universes where energy was infinite. Every second it reached across dimensional barriers and took what it needed. The aliens thought power generation had limits. Humans decided to cheat. Captain, I'm receiving multiple communications from Korthax Command, the communications officer announced. They're demanding an explanation. Ignore them for now, Sarah ordered. How's our quantum entanglement network? All 12 projection nodes are operational, Park reported. We can appear in multiple systems simultaneously whenever you're ready. This was perhaps the most impossible thing about the Prometheus Unbound. It wasn't just one ship. Through quantum entanglement, it could project copies of itself across vast distances. Not holograms or illusions, but real, solid projections that could fight and destroy just as effectively as the original. The aliens traveled faster than light. Humans decided to be in multiple places at once. The weapon systems were humanity's love letter to paranoia. Relativistic kinetic missiles that could accelerate to near light speed in seconds. Directed singularity projectors that created tiny black holes. Nanoscale disassemblers that could take apart enemy ships atom by atom. But the most terrifying weapons were the ones that broke causality itself. Weapons that fired backwards through time, destroying targets before the weapon was fired. Entropy fields that could age enemy ships 10,000 years in seconds. Every weapon was different because humans had learned that specialization was death. The galaxy's ships were designed to fight in specific ways with specific tactics. Human ships were designed to fight in every way possible, including ways that shouldn't exist. Restore their systems, Sarah finally ordered. Let them report back to their command. On the scout ships, lights flickered back on.
Engines hummed to life.
Confused and frightened crews checked their systems, finding everything exactly as it should be. No damage, no infiltration, no explanation for what had happened, just the memory of being completely helpless. In his ready room aboard the Sovereign's Mandate, Admiral Vexthal received Captain Mordeth's full report. He read it 4 times, each time hoping to find some explanation that made sense. The human ship had technology that violated the laws of physics as the galaxy understood them. It had disabled 12 scout ships without firing a weapon. It claimed to be on a peaceful transit, but its very existence was an act of war against everything the Empire believed. How? He asked his senior staff, who had gathered for an emergency meeting. How did humans develop this technology? Our surveillance shows their colonies still using fusion power. Their civilian ships still use primitive drives. Where did this ship come from? Maybe they found precursor technology, suggested the science officer. Ancient artifacts from a dead civilization. No, Vexthal said slowly, a terrible realization dawning on him. Don't you see? This isn't found technology. This is human technology. Look at it. It's crude and elegant at the same time. It's paranoid, expecting everything to go wrong. It has redundancies for its redundancies. This is exactly how humans would build a warship if they could. The question isn't how. The question is, why show it now? The answer came from Earth, in a transmission broadcast on every frequency the Empire used, not just to the Sovereign's mandate, but to every ship, every station, every colony in Korthax space. The face that appeared on the screens was human, but the eyes were older than they should be. This was someone who had seen too much and decided to do something about it. "I am Admiral David Chen of the United Earth Navy," the man said. His voice was calm, controlled, but there was steel underneath. 50 years ago, you found us and decided we were primitive. You gave us a place in your empire as subjects, not equals. You restricted our technology, limited our expansion, and taxed our people. We accepted this because we needed time. Time to learn. Time to build. Time to prepare. The transmission showed images of human colonies, but not as the Empire knew them. Hidden beneath the crude surface structures were vast underground complexes. Ships that looked primitive on the outside were revealed to have impossible technology hidden within. Entire moons had been hollowed out and turned into shipyards. "The Prometheus Unbound is not our only ship," Admiral Chen continued. "We have 12 like it, each one unique, each one impossible by your standards. We don't want war. We want to be left alone. But if you force our hand, you'll learn why our world tried so hard to kill us and why we survived anyway." The transmission ended with coordinates, a location in empty space where, Admiral Chen promised, they would demonstrate exactly what human ships could do. It was an invitation and a threat wrapped in politeness. "Come see what we can do. Come understand what you're dealing with. Come learn why you should leave us alone." Vexthul stared at the coordinates for a long time. Every instinct told him this was a trap, but he had no choice. The Empire couldn't ignore this threat. They had to know what they were facing. They had to understand how 50 years of surveillance had missed an entire civilization preparing for war. What scared him most wasn't the technology. It was the patience. Humans had waited 50 years pretending to be weak, accepting every insult and restriction. They had built their weapons in secret, trained their crews in darkness, and prepared for a war they didn't want but would win if forced to fight. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed humans were prey because they didn't bare their teeth. They never considered that humans might be the kind of predator that didn't need to show its weapons, the kind that waited, watched, and struck only when victory was certain. Now, looking at the data from the Prometheus Unbound, Vexthul understood the truth. Humans weren't new to the galactic stage. They were just finally ready to perform. The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. Representatives from every major power in the galaxy had gathered for an emergency session. The massive hall, which usually hosted calm diplomatic discussions, now echoed with shouting, arguing, and barely controlled panic. At the center of it all was a holographic display of the Prometheus Unbound, rotating slowly like a predator being studied from a safe distance. The ethereal collective's ambassador, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline form, pulsed with agitation. This has to be a deception, a trick. Humans don't have the industrial capacity to build something like this. Our economic models show it would take their entire gross planetary product for 100 years just to gather the raw materials. Your models assumed. They were being honest about their economy. The Machine Concordance representative responded. It was a perfect mechanical sphere that spoke in mathematical certainty. We calculate a 97.3% probability that humans have been falsifying their economic data for at least 30 years. The remaining 2.7% probability suggests they found an activated precursor technology. The Korthax representative, Sub-Admiral Teshvar, stood to address the assembly. "My people have seen this ship in action. It disabled 12 of our scouts without firing a single traditional weapon. It manipulated space-time itself. This is not precursor technology. This is something new, something human." "Impossible," 3 different ambassadors said at once. That word hung in the air until the human representative stood up. Ambassador Maria Rodriguez was an older woman, 70 years old with silver hair and kind eyes. She had been Earth's voice in the Council for 20 years, always polite, always accepting of the Council's decisions, always seemingly grateful for any small concession given to humanity. Now she smiled, and that smile made several representatives step back. "Impossible," she repeated as if tasting the word. "You keep using that word. Do you know what humans think when you tell us something is impossible? We think it's a challenge. You said it was impossible for us to survive on Earth with its predators, diseases, and disasters. We thrived. You said it was impossible for us to reach space with our primitive technology. We reached it. You said it was impossible for us to compete with galactic civilization. Well, she gestured to the hologram of the Prometheus Unbound. Every restriction you placed on us, every technology you denied us, every limit you imposed, you were teaching us. Not how to obey, but how to innovate. You showed us your best technology and told us we couldn't have it, so we made something better. You showed us your military doctrine and told us we couldn't match it, so we created new doctrines. You showed us the rules of galactic warfare, so we decided to break them. Before anyone could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the chamber. The security chief's voice echoed through the hall. Multiple anomalies detected. 12 unknown signatures appearing in home systems across council space. The holographic display changed, showing a map of the galaxy. 12 red dots appeared simultaneously in 12 different systems, not traveling to them but simply appearing, as if they had always been there. Each dot was in a major system of a council member species. Each one was positioned near a military installation. The ethereal ambassador's glow flickered with confusion. That's impossible. You can't be in 12 places at once. The energy requirements alone would need a dozen stars worth of power. Maria Rodriguez's smile widened. There's that word again, impossible. Captain Chen, would you care to demonstrate? The main display shifted to show Captain Sarah Chen on the bridge of the Prometheus Unbound. Behind her, the view screen showed a Korthax military station. Members of the Galactic Council, Sarah said calmly. What you're seeing is not 12 ships. It's one ship existing in 12 locations simultaneously through quantum entanglement projection. Each projection is fully capable of combat operations. We developed this technology because you told us faster than light travel was the only way to move between stars quickly. We disagreed. The demonstration that followed would be remembered as the moment the galaxy's understanding of warfare changed forever. In each of the 12 systems, the Prometheus Unbound projection did something different, showing off a different impossible weapon or defense. In the Korthax system, it fired a weapon that seemed to move backwards through time. The military station's shields flickered and died before the weapon was even launched. Then the weapon fired and the station's armor began to dissolve, but not in a normal way. It aged, rusting and crumbling as if centuries were passing in seconds. In the Ethereal Collective's home system, the human ship demonstrated something even more terrifying. It created what humans called a concept bomb. Suddenly, every ethereal within a light year found it physically painful to even think about attacking humans. Not mind control, but something deeper. The very concept of human aggression had been weaponized and turned into a defense. In the machine concordate system, the Prometheus Unbound showed perhaps its most frightening capability. It reached into the concordate's most secure military network, not by hacking, but by existing partially in the same dimensional space as the data streams. It didn't break their encryption, it simply existed where the data was and read it directly. But what truly terrified the Council was what happened next. After demonstrating 12 different impossible weapons, each projection of the Prometheus Unbound began to repair the damage it had caused. The age station became new again. The conceptual pain vanished. The security breaches sealed themselves. In less than a minute, everything was exactly as it had been before, except for the memory of what had happened. This is our message, Captain Chen said. We can destroy and we can restore. We can end conflicts or prevent them from ever beginning. We've moved beyond your understanding of warfare because we never forgot that the best war is the one you don't have to fight. The council chamber had gone completely silent. The implications were staggering. Humans hadn't just caught up to galactic technology. They had surpassed it by thinking in directions no other species had considered. They had looked at the rules of physics and warfare and decided those rules were more like suggestions. The Korthax sub-admiral was the first to speak. How many of these ships do you have? Enough, Maria Rodriguez answered simply. We have enough. And before you ask, yes, each one is different. Each one breaks different rules. We didn't build a fleet of identical ships because that would be predictable. We built a collection of arguments against conventional warfare. What do you want? The machine concordate asked with mechanical directness. Freedom, Maria said. Real freedom. No more restrictions on our technology. No more limits on our expansion. No more taxes that punish us for being human. We want to be left alone to grow and develop as we choose. In return, we won't use these ships unless we're threatened. And if we refuse? The ethereal ambassador asked. Though its glow had dimmed considerably, Maria's kind eyes turned cold. Then you'll learn why humans are the only species on Earth that survived everything our planet threw at us. You'll learn why we're called persistence predators. You'll learn why impossible is our favorite word. But most importantly, you'll learn why we spent 50 years pretending to be weak. It wasn't because we were afraid. It was because we're not monsters. We don't want to hurt anyone, but we will if you make us. The vote that followed was the fastest in Council history. Unanimous approval for removing all restrictions on human technology and expansion. Unanimous agreement to treat humanity as an equal member of the galactic community. Unanimous decision to never ever give humans a reason to use their impossible ships in anger. As the council session ended, and representatives hurried back to their home systems to report what they had witnessed, Admiral Vexthul received a private message from Captain Chen. It was short and simple. We're still coming to those coordinates. You need to see what happens when we actually try to fight. You need to understand why you should be grateful we don't want to. The Admiral read the message 3 times. Each time his fear grew. Because if what they had just seen was humans showing restraint, what would they do when they actually wanted to win? What other impossible things had they built? What other rules were they prepared to break? In human space, hidden in hollowed-out asteroids and disguised space stations, 11 other impossible ships waited quietly. Each one unique. Each one wrong by all known laws of physics. Each one a testament to human creativity, paranoia, and determination. The Prometheus Unbound had been the gentle introduction, the polite warning shot. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but they had just been given a gift. Humans had chosen not to conquer them. They had chosen not to rule them. They had chosen to be neighbors instead of overlords. It was the kindest thing humanity could do. It was also the most terrifying, because it meant humans were confident enough in their power that they didn't need to prove it. They didn't need to conquer because they knew they could. They didn't need to rule because they had already won. The galaxy had spent 50 years thinking humans were learning how to be part of galactic civilization. In reality, humans had been learning how to end it if necessary. And they had decided not to. Admiral Vexthul stood on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by the might of the Korthax Empire's Third Fleet. 2,000 ships hung in space around him, a display of power that had made entire civilizations surrender without firing a shot. Battleships the size of cities, destroyers that could crack moons, carriers that held thousands of fighter craft. It was the largest gathering of military force in the sector's history, and across from them, floating alone in the empty space at the coordinates the humans had provided, was the single form of the Prometheus Unbound. Sir, the fleet is in position, his tactical officer reported. All ships report ready for combat. Should we demand their surrender? Vexthul stared at the human ship on his display. It looked even smaller when surrounded by his fleet. 1 ship against 2,000. By every law of warfare he knew, this was suicide for the humans. But nothing about humans followed the laws he knew anymore. Open a channel, he ordered. Captain Sarah Chen appeared on the screen, still calm, still showing no fear despite facing odds that should have been impossible to overcome. Behind her, her bridge crew worked at their stations with the same strange calmness. Admiral Vexthul, she said politely, thank you for coming. I know this looks like we're insane. 1 ship against your entire fleet. But you need to understand something. You're not facing 1 ship. You're facing human military doctrine, and that's something your empire has never encountered before. Captain Chen, Vexthul replied, trying to keep his voice steady. Surely we can discuss this without violence. Your ship is impressive, but you cannot defeat 2,000 vessels. Sarah actually smiled. Admiral, I'm going to give you 1 chance to reconsider. Order your fleet to stand down. This doesn't have to happen. The bridge of the Sovereign's mandate erupted in angry voices. Officers demanded they open fire immediately for such disrespect. Others called for the humans' immediate surrender. But Vexthul raised his hand for silence, studying the human captain's face. She wasn't bluffing. She truly believed she could win. I cannot stand down, he said finally. The Empire cannot be seen as weak. But I offer you this. Surrender now and you and your crew will be treated well. Your ship will be studied and humanity will be given a seat on the council. This is generous. No, Sarah said simply. I'm sorry, Admiral. I tried to warn you. She turned to her crew. Execute Chaos Protocol 7. What happened next broke every rule of space warfare that had been established over thousands of years of galactic conflict. The Prometheus Unbound didn't move to attack or defend. Instead, it simply stopped being one ship. It split apart like a living thing, dividing, becoming two ships, then four, then eight. Within seconds, there were 1,000 copies of the Prometheus Unbound, each one identical, each one reading as completely real on every sensor. Impossible, the tactical officer shouted. They can't all be real.
The power requirements.
The mass. It's impossible. But the 1,000 ships were already moving, and not in any formation the Korthax had ever seen. They moved like a swarm of insects, each one following its own chaotic path, making it impossible to predict where any one ship would be from moment to moment. They phased in and out of visible space, appearing inside the formation of the Third Fleet. The Korthax ships opened fire, thousands of beam weapons and missiles filling space with death. But the human ships didn't try to dodge. They didn't need to. They existed partially in other dimensions, letting the weapons pass through them like they were ghosts. When they solidified to attack, it was only for the split second needed to fire their own impossible weapons. One human ship appeared inside the shields of a battleship and released what looked like a cloud of dust. Within seconds, the entire battleship began to dissolve, its atoms being reorganized into their component particles. The crew evacuated in escape pods, only to watch their ship become a cloud of hydrogen and trace elements. Another human ship fired a beam that didn't damage its target, but reversed its controls. Suddenly, the destroyer's engines pushed it backward when the pilot tried to go forward. Its weapons fired in the opposite direction of where they were aimed. Its shields repelled its own crew while letting enemy fire through. A third demonstrated something even stranger. It created a bubble of space where entropy worked backward. Inside the bubble, destroyed fighters reformed themselves. Exploded missiles reassembled and flew backward into their launchers. It wasn't healing or time reversal. It was making chaos itself work in reverse. "Sir, we've lost 100 ships already," the tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. "No casualties, but the ships are just gone. Some aged to dust, some turned into energy, some just stopped existing. I don't understand what's happening." Vexithul watched his perfect fleet being taken apart by an enemy that didn't fight like any enemy should. The humans weren't trying to destroy his ships in normal ways. They were using each ship as a demonstration of a different way to win. One ship would use gravity manipulation to compress a destroyer into a marble-sized sphere. Another would phase a battleship partially into another dimension, leaving half of it in normal space and half somewhere else. "Focus fire on the original ship," he commanded.
It has to be controlling the others.
100 ships turned their weapons on what they thought was the original Prometheus Unbound. The combined firepower could have shattered a small moon. The beams converged on the human ship and passed through it because it wasn't there. It had never been there. It was a projection from one of the other copies, which was itself a projection from another copy, in an endless loop of existence that made it impossible to find the real ship. "Admiral," Captain Chen's voice came through the chaos. "Do you understand now? We don't fight battles. We end them. Every rule you know, every tactic you've learned, every weapon you've built. They all assume your enemy thinks like you do. But we don't, we never have." She was right. Humans had evolved on a world that didn't follow rules, where predators attacked from below, above, and sometimes from inside, where the weather could kill as easily as any animal, where diseases struck without warning and poison could look like food. Humans had learned that the only way to survive was to expect everything to go wrong and be ready for anything. Their military doctrine reflected this. Don't have one strategy, have 1,000. Don't build one type of weapon. Build every type, including types that shouldn't exist. Don't fight fair, fight to win. And most importantly, don't let your enemy know what you can really do until it's too late. The Third Fleet was down to half strength now, and still, not a single life had been lost. The humans were being careful, almost surgical in their destruction. They disabled life support only after crew had evacuated. They aged ships to dust only in sections that were empty. They were showing that they could destroy everything without killing anyone. "Sir," the communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving surrender signals from multiple ships. They're refusing to fight anymore." Vexthul looked at his display. A quarter of his remaining ships were signaling surrender. Their crews had seen enough. They understood what the humans were demonstrating. This wasn't a battle, it was a lesson. And the lesson was simple. Humans had moved beyond conventional warfare into something else entirely. Then, something even more impossible happened. The Prometheus Unbound, all 1,000 copies of it, stopped attacking. They hung in space, waiting. Captain Chen appeared on the screen again. "Admiral, I'm going to show you something. Please watch carefully." Every single destroyed ship began to reform. Not repair, reform. The dust became metal again. The energy became matter. The aged husks became new ships. Even the ship that had been compressed into a marble expanded back to its original size. Within minutes, every single destroyed vessel was whole again, floating exactly where it had been before the battle started. "How?" Fextel whispered. "We recorded the quantum state of every atom in your ships before we attacked," Sarah explained. "We can restore them to that exact state. We can undo any damage we cause. We can bring back anything we destroy." "Do you understand what this means, Admiral?" He did. It meant humans had power over creation and destruction that made them almost godlike. They could end any threat and then bring it back if they chose. They could fight wars without permanent consequences. They could destroy entire fleets and then restore them as a warning. "We don't want to rule the galaxy," Sarah continued. "We don't want to conquer or control. We just want to be left alone. But if anyone threatens us or our allies, this is what they face. Not death, because death is simple. They face the knowledge that we could end them whenever we want, and choose not to. They face living with the memory of being completely helpless." Bexthal looked at his restored fleet. Every ship was perfect, but every crew member who had witnessed the battle would never forget it. They would remember being helpless. They would remember watching physics itself bend to human will. They would remember that humans had chosen to let them live. "Stand down," he ordered quietly. "All ships stand down." The 1,000 copies of the Prometheus Unbound merged back into one ship. It hung there, small and alone against the massive fleet, but nobody could see it as small anymore. They could only see it as what it was, a predator that had chosen not to feed. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every communication network, every trading post, every diplomatic channel buzzed with the same impossible story. The humans, the primitive species everyone had pitied, had just revealed themselves as the most advanced military power in known space. And they had done it without killing a single person. Within a week, everything changed. The Galactic Council didn't just offer humanity a seat. They offered them a permanent position on the Security Council, with full veto power. Trade restrictions vanished overnight. Technology sharing agreements were torn up and replaced with simple promises of non-aggression. The various empires and federations that had spent decades limiting human expansion suddenly found urgent business in other parts of the galaxy, far from human space. On Earth, Admiral David Chen stood in the underground command center that had coordinated humanity's deception for half a century. The room was filled with screens showing reactions from across the galaxy: fear, awe, confusion, respect. Every emotion except the condescension humans had endured for so long. "Sir, we're receiving a priority message from the Ethereal Collective," an aide reported. "They're requesting permission to study our dimensional phase technology. They're offering their complete database on zero-point energy in exchange." David smiled. "Tell them we'll consider it, but remind them that we figured out zero-point energy 15 years ago. We just didn't tell anyone." That was the truth that was slowly dawning on the galaxy. Humans hadn't just hidden their military technology. They had hidden everything. Their cities that looked primitive from orbit had fusion reactors the size of coffee cups powering them. Their cargo ships that seemed to barely hold together were actually testing grounds for experimental drives. Their colonies that appeared to struggle were actually thriving underground cities that could house millions. Captain Sarah, Chen was given command of the entire hidden fleet. 12 impossible ships that each broke different rules. The Prometheus Unbound was actually one of the simpler designs. Her sister ship, the Pandora's Box, could create pocket universes and trap enemies inside them. The Schrodinger's Revenge existed in a state of quantum superposition, being destroyed and victorious simultaneously until observed. The Darwin's Last Laugh could evolve in real time, developing immunity to any weapon used against it. But perhaps the most impossible ship was the one nobody ever saw. The Humanity's Mercy was a ship that prevented wars before they started. It could manipulate probability itself, making aggressive actions fail through seemingly random accidents. Weapons would malfunction, engines would stall, communications would fail at crucial moments. Wars would end before they began, and nobody would know why except humans. 3 months after the revelation, the first real test came. A species called the Devourers arrived from beyond the galactic edge. They were a horror from another galaxy. Billions of biomechanical creatures that consumed entire worlds, turning all matter into more of themselves. They had destroyed 12 galaxies before arriving here. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. Representatives panicked, shouting about evacuation plans and last stands. The historical record showed what the Devourers did. They stripped worlds bare. They consumed stars. They were entropy incarnate, turning order into chaos, life into death. "We need to evacuate the outer rim," the Korthax representative said. "Maybe if we sacrifice those systems, we can buy time to mount a defense." "What defense?" The machine concordant calculated. "Our analysis shows they will consume the galaxy in 12.7 years. No conventional weapon has ever stopped them." Then Maria Rodriguez, still Earth's ambassador, stood up. She looked older now, tired from months of managing humanity's new position in the galaxy, but her eyes were sharp as she spoke. "We'll handle it," she said simply. The council chamber erupted. Handle it? Handle a threat that had destroyed entire galaxies? Even with their impossible technology, how could humans stop something that ate stars? "Give us 1 week," Maria continued. "If we fail, you can try your evacuation plans, but I think you'll find them unnecessary." 7 days later, the 12 human ships jumped to the edge of the galaxy where the Devourer swarm had been detected. 1,000,000 biomechanical horrors, each the size of a city, surrounded by billions of smaller creatures that could strip a planet in hours. They moved like a plague across space, consuming asteroids and preparing to descend on the first inhabited world. The human fleet didn't hesitate. Each ship engaged with its own impossible weapons. The Prometheus Unbound split into 1,000,000 copies, each one attacking a different creature. The Pandora's box opened pocket dimensions and shoved entire swarms inside, sealing them away from reality. The Darwin's last laugh let itself be consumed, then evolved into a poison that spread through the Devourer network. But the real victory came from the ship called Grandfather Paradox. It fired a single weapon, a temporal cascade missile that didn't just destroy the Devourers. It made it so they had never existed in the first place. The missile traveled backward through time, creating a paradox where the Devourers destroyed themselves before they could evolve. The battle lasted 17 minutes. Not because the humans needed that long to win, but because they wanted to make sure every trace of the Devourers was gone. They didn't just defeat them, they erased them from history. The only evidence they had ever existed was in the memories of those who had witnessed the battle. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the human fleet returned. They had done the impossible again. They had stopped an unstoppable force. They had ended a threat that had consumed galaxies, and they had done it in less time than it took most species to hold a staff meeting. How? Admiral Vexthal asked Captain Chen when they met afterward. "How do you do these impossible things?" Sarah looked at him with something like pity. "You still don't understand. We don't do impossible things. We do human things. Every species in the galaxy evolved in peace, developing technology when they felt like it, exploring space because they were curious. We evolved in hell. We developed technology because we had to. We went to space because staying on Earth meant death." She pulled up a hologram of Earth showing its history. "Our planet tried to kill us with ice ages. We invented fire. It tried to kill us with predators. We invented weapons. It tried to kill us with diseases. We invented medicine. It tried to kill us with disasters. We invented technology. Every challenge made us stronger. Every impossibility made us more creative. But the physics," Vexthal protested. "The laws of reality itself." "Our guidelines," Sarah finished. "You see laws. We see suggestions. You see impossibility. We see opportunity. That's the difference. That's why we could hide for 50 years. That's why we can do what we do. Because while you were telling us what was impossible, we were figuring out how to do it anyway." A year passed. Humanity's 12 ships became the guardian fleet of the galaxy. Not conquerors, not rulers, just guardians. When pirates threatened trade routes, a human ship would appear and the pirates would suddenly forget why they wanted to steal. When empires prepared for war, their weapons would mysteriously fail until diplomats could find peace. When natural disasters threatened worlds, human ships would arrive and simply undo the damage. The galaxy slept better, knowing humans were watching. The species that they had dismissed as primitive had become their protectors. The children they had tried to control had become their guardians. It was humbling and terrifying and wonderful all at once. In the Korthax Military Academy, Admiral Vex Thule, now retired, taught the next generation of officers. His most popular lecture was always the same, the one about humans. He would stand before his students, his forearms crossed behind his back, and speak the truth that had taken him too long to learn. The humans don't wage war, he would say. They end it. They don't have warships. They have arguments against the existence of their enemies. They don't follow the laws of physics. They negotiate with them. And most importantly, they don't see impossible as a barrier. They see it as a challenge. He would pause, making sure every student understood. Never fight humans. Not because they're strong, though they are. Not because they're advanced, though they are. But because they're human. They evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day, and they won. They faced extinction so many times that they learned to laugh at it. When they say something is impossible, they're not stating a fact. They're issuing a challenge to themselves. And they always win that challenge. On Earth, in a small office overlooking the Pacific Ocean, Sarah Chen retired from active service. She had commanded the ship that changed the galaxy, led the fleet that protected it, and helped humanity find its place among the stars. Now she taught at the academy, sharing the real secret of human success with the next generation. We're not special because we're strong, she would tell her students. We're special because we're stubborn. The universe told us we couldn't survive. We did anyway. The galaxy told us we were primitive. We proved them wrong. Reality itself told us what was impossible. We did it anyway. That's what makes us human. Not our technology, not our weapons, but our absolute refusal to accept limits. Our complete inability to give up. Our stupid, beautiful, impossible determination to survive and thrive no matter what the universe throws at us.